Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us tonight for Deep Issues, webisode number 30. If you were with us for Politics of the Empire number 9, thanks for staying on board with us. If you're just coming on now, thank you as well for joining us. It's day 5316 in the search for Tim Shovelday. I'm your host, Josh Houslander. With me, as always, producer extraordinaire Adam Hernandez and Deep Issues expert Edwin Zaharsky. Tonight's topic is, and Adam, I promise this is the last time I'll use his full name. Tonight's topic is Milton William Cooper. Also more commonly known as William Cooper or just Bill Cooper, who in a lot of ways I like to refer to him as kind of like the godfather of conspiracy theories. The godfather of the conspiracy theories, the most of the main conspiracy theories, except for the reptile thing. That's all David Icke. But most of the main conspiracy theories were, well, I don't want to say started by him, but if you learned about them 5 or 10 years ago, there's a very good chance Bill Cooper was talking about them 15 or 20 years ago. He's been around for a long time. He is very famous for writing the book, the 1991 underground classic, Behold a Pale Horse. And after that, he hosted a radio show known as The Hour of the Time for many years. But, what's up, Adam? What's up, Ed? How you guys doing?
Good.
Cool. This is a kind of a different topic for us tonight because we're talking about one guy who talked about a whole bunch of different things over the years. And this is a person that we have brought up on a whole bunch of other podcasts before. We've never done a show about him directly, but we have referenced him, we've mentioned his name, we have used him as a reference, and we have talked about many of the things he believes many times in the show, whether it was shows about Illuminati or aliens or the moon landing or 9/11 or the JFK assassination, dozens of different things that we've talked about on this show. One of the main ones being, we did one of our favorite Deep Issues shows ever was on the JFK assassination, where we showed the tape that, to many, reveals the driver of the car being one of the shooters. And it was Bill Cooper who brought that tape to light. Right on like the mainstream media, too. Right on the MSN. He brought that to light. And basically what he did while revealing that tape, which, despite that being, on mainstream media at the time, and a lot of people seeing it, it still was kind of covered up to some degree. Like, it wasn't talked about that much. It was a big deal for a minute, and then we all kind of just forgot about it. But what he did while doing that, it's kind of fascinating because, for good reason, he was scared that there'd be retribution for this. What he did was make thousands of VHS copies of that, and before he went on air, mailed them to places all over the country to make sure that, hey, I'm the guy that released this. If I wake up dead in the next couple days, know why. So basically, he covered his own ass in a way that it seemed like he always tried to set himself up to be the guy that, hey, if they kill me, then I'm probably right.
So it's what we should have done with the last show.
Yeah. Yeah, for those of you, we're a little skittish on this show right now. For those of you who didn't catch Politics of the Empire, we brought up some things. The last show was about political revolution, to sum it up in a pair of words.
It was about revolution.
Sure. Okay, yeah.
Political revolution came up.
It was. And Adam, it was Adam, by the way, not me, said something about the NSA and how one would combat.
I didn't say that, was Ed.
Ed wasn't even on the show. But he was here prepping for this show. And as he said it, Siri all of a sudden seemed to turn herself on Adam's phone. And
Siri decided to chime in.
Right. right away with a comment that I'd never heard from Siri before. Something about, "Did you summon me on accident?" I believe is what Siri said.
I don't know what it said. I just turned it off.
Yeah, so we're a little skittish, especially going into that one, and then this show's even more directed towards government conspiracies and the like. So it sounds like the NSA is listening. So hey, thanks for tuning in, guys.
Before, who's remember Edward Snowden?
Yeah,
You know what's great on Twitter? He follows one person, and it's the NSA.
really?
Yeah, he follows one person, and yep, and it's the and he follows the NSA on Twitter.
That's awesome. It's awesome. Born to be a troll.
Yeah.
Even in his retired trolling, he's still.
No, he's living it up in Russia.
He is too.
Doing, I don't know, he's running an organization or something like that.
Oh yeah, he says he plans to stay there the rest of his life.
Well, he doesn't have a choice.
Right.
Whatever which country's gonna give him asylum that's not the United States and doesn't have a extradition policy.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the United States.
No, I mean he was. I would have been very curious to. I wish William Cooper and Edward Snowden. I wish they could have been around at the same time. Actually, probably would have been some good insight into that with Bill Cooper. We could actually talk about, before we jump into how he felt about individual things, we should talk about the end. Kind of reveal the ending of this story now as to why we don't have William Cooper anymore. He'd be 71 years old if he was still alive, I believe. Something like that. No. About 75 years old if he was still alive.
He wouldn't be old today.
Yeah. No, he would not at all. No, he'd be 75 years old. He was born on May 6th, 1943.
No, day after my birthday.
Yeah. So basically, he died on November 5th, 2001. A lot of things happened in 2001, as you know, as we all know. So he died a little less than 2 months after the Twin Towers went down.
What did he die?
November 5th, 2001.
So remember the 5th of November?
Yep. The gunpowder treason and plots. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. But yes, he did die on the 5th of November. After he had predicted 9/11.
What did he say to predict 9/11?
You know what? We should have had you dig that up. What he said was, he said that there is going to be a huge tragedy and that they are going to blame Osama bin Laden.
I don't think he predicted the specific date, but essentially that calamity, and specifically blaming it on
He
Osama
said
bin
that
Laden.
the next big thing that happens, that is going to be, cataclysmic, or whatever, the next big thing that happens is going to be an attack, and it is going to be blamed on Osama bin Laden.
So that could be taken as people, well, that's super vague, and there's a million conspiracy theories, and it's still, I think, kind of specific enough, especially right before it actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, and if people want to look that up, that's pretty, readily findable on the internet. He goes very in depth. He talks about how Osama bin Laden, how they've just conducted an interview with him, and how are they conducting interviews with this guy that supposedly all the intelligence organizations can't find, yet some reporter, found him in his cave and conducted this interview with him. And I thought it was pretty eerie when I've listened to it and heard it. And yeah, Adam, if you feel like bringing that up, you could. We could play it, later or whatever in the show. But he predicted that early 2001, I believe. Then September 11th, of course, happens on, September 11th, 2001, and he dies on November 5th of 2001. What I find to be strange is and I'm not saying the new version is wrong, but when you look at Wikipedia now, they tell a story of what happened that day when Bill Cooper was killed. That's not the story they used to tell.
You can't really rely on... So Wikipedia can be good to find sources, and, it's good
Sure.
that it can be edited by other people.
It can be.
And you got people checking, but there's definitely slants to Wikipedia, so, its biggest utility is just finding sources more so than...
Sure. No, Wikipedia can be useful, but no, it is not you can't write a paper and cite Wikipedia.
The spookiest thing I've ever heard with Wikipedia, and this is going off a little bit, but just
Sure, no, it's all right.
Is, do you guys remember Chris Benoit?
Mm-hmm.
Remember, yeah, wrestler who killed himself, killed his family.
Yeah.
The spooky thing about that is he had a Wikipedia entry. Obviously, he's a wrestler, big name wrestler at the time. It said that he died in there hours before he actually died. And it was, they tried to explain it. The only thing they could come up with was it was just a weird coincidence. And they traced the IP of the person who supposedly wrote that to Stamford, Connecticut, I believe. And Stamford, Connecticut is the location of the WWE, the organization that or the wrestling promotion that he worked for when he died.
Yeah.
And that was,
yeah, I don't believe in coincidences.
That's a pretty big coincidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not saying that it is or isn't. It's just that's, to me, that's very, very spooky to think about, that it happened. That they entered this in, hours before he was reported to actually have killed himself.
Would it surprise you at all to find out that the mainstream story that's floated out there about him killing himself and his family wasn't actually what happened?
But I think when I do, yes. Could it be different than what we're actually told? Yes. But then I try to think about too, why would somebody make something like that up?
Yeah, they wouldn't.
It's not like Chris Benoit was, some government agent or anything like that. Well, that we know of. The guy was a wrestler who probably took too many steroids. They say that he had
They all do.
They say that he had the brain of an 80-year-old Alzheimer's patient, due to all the drugs and, all the blows to the head that he took over, the course of his career.
Again, they say.
And he ended up freaking out and,
No, it's a tragic story.
killing his young son and his wife. I don't know what the end game, as you would say, Josh, to lying about something like that.
Right.
Unless he was murdered. Unless there's some inner workings with the WWE. And
did he pay his taxes?
I don't know if he paid his taxes or not.
The thing that is different to me, and hey, if I am wrong about this, anybody out there listening, if I am wrong about this, then show me I'm wrong. I'm not, I'm not the expert on this, but I am somebody that's followed the career of Bill Cooper for a long, long time. Since Ed and I were teenagers, we've been talking about this guy and following this guy. Before I even knew how to work an internet connection, I was doing that. Ed knew how, but he's a lot smarter than I am. And Ed used to print his stuff out on printable paper for me and hand it to me. And I would delve in and study it. I've been following this guy for a long time. And the story about the day he died seems to have changed some. And the one thing that is very different, to me anyway, and you could say, well, they just didn't release that information yet. But it now says that there was a gun when he was killed. Okay, I guess I should lay the groundwork. He had warrants for tax evasion out, and they sent a bunch of armed men, sheriffs. They were not, supposedly anyway, were not federal agents, they're sheriffs from his town, from local law enforcement, showed up there to arrest him, and he was shot at his home. The story now says that he returned fire, and it also says that he shot one of the police officers in the head. I've never been able to find the name of this police officer that he supposedly shot in the head.
It makes it sound, like, oh, well, he shot an officer.
Right.
You got to kill him.
I mean, well, you would think too that would be a prominent piece of the story that
Right.
An officer was shot and killed.
And when you go to Wikipedia or other sources now,
They don't say he was killed, just that he was shot in the head.
Just he was shot. Okay, he was shot in the head.
the reason they do not.
He
That
should
is
have
true.
some scars somewhere, because how do you get
Right.
shot in the head without
Right.
some damage?
Yeah, you hear shot in the head, you assume died, but people do get shot in the head and
survive, yeah.
It does happen, especially if it's grazed them or something. I don't know. And it doesn't say. The reason I keep citing Wikipedia is because when I found this in other sources, it was always the exact same text as the Wikipedia text. So I'm saying it's Wikipedia because when I see text on Wikipedia and then I see it somewhere else, I go with, well, they got their information from Wikipedia. And I'm not criticizing somebody from getting their information from Wikipedia if that's the only place you can get it from. I don't know. So
Hey, it saved me in college.
Yeah, they got it from Wikipedia, or Wikipedia got it from somebody else. But everywhere I found it, it was the same text about this.
Thank God for Wikipedia.
Yeah. Oh no, Wikipedia is awesome. Don't get me wrong, Wikipedia is awesome. But it is true, like Ed said, anyone can edit Wikipedia.
Sure. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That wasn't part of the story before. That he kills. And granted, there is plenty of instances on his radio show where he says, hey, someday they're going to come to get me, and, I'm going to shoot back. There are instances where he is recorded as saying this years before, hey, one of these days, a direct quote from him is, they're not going to let me do this forever. That, they've put up with me for a long time, and basically is what he's saying, and they're not going to let me do this forever. One of these days they're going to come for me, and he's basically said, and when that day comes, I will probably shoot back.
Which is plausible. I mean, it's plausible to think that he actually did shoot back.
Mm-hmm.
But
which, when you're sitting at your own home and armed men show up at your house.
I was going to say too, on that same notion though, Josh, how many times have the police made something up to try to better their position and win over public opinion? Yeah. Take for instance, what was it? Was it fall of last year, when that cop, the off-duty cop, she stumbled into that black man's apartment, and
she thought it was hers.
She thought it was hers, and she ended up shooting him and killing the guy. And you heard every single story in the book. Oh, well, he was armed. He was this. He was that. He was drunk, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's
somebody busted into his house in the middle of the night. And he grabbed a gun.
Yeah, if that's even what happened. But you heard every excuse,
right?
Out of the book from this former police officer. Now that this is why I did it. No, bottom line is you were in the guy's apartment, and
you know what? Maybe he was drunk. Do you know who else we know was drunk in that instance? The police officer. He was drunk in his house.
Yeah, even if he was drunk, it doesn't matter.
He was drunk at night in his living room.
Yeah.
That's, according to the police anyway, that's where you're supposed to be drunk. Right? I mean, she got out of a car. Oops, not supposed to do that, right? Got out of her car, walked into a place, and she was, presumably drunk.
But
to say that she's drunk, I mean, I would hope so. I mean, to make that mistake, I mean, for God's sake, how ridiculous!
And it's not just that too. I mean, you could talk about Philando Castile, who was shot while he had a gun permit on him, and he wasn't even reaching for his gun. Or the guy who was, shot as he was running away from the cops.
Right.
And there was, video evidence of the cop going up to the body and, dropping something right by it, trying to effectively plant something on him to better his case.
I lecture on occasion for a retired retired cop in his college. He's now a professor. And when I talked to him about that, I give him a lot of credit, and I know a lot of other cops feel this way. He just said about the guy that shot the one running away.
Yeah, I believe that was like North or South Carolina or something like that.
He goes, that's murder.
Yeah.
Because that man committed murder right there. I don't care what anyone says. And this is a guy who's a police officer for 40 years. I said, goes, they got a word for that. It's called murder. He goes, that man should go to jail for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
That he committed first-degree murder.
Yeah.
Another thing that I feel is different, or that seems very different to me, is now when you look up Wikipedia, they list some other crimes that Bill Cooper was... Still none of them are like murder or anything, but they list a few other crimes that he was supposedly under indictment for. I'm pretty sure it used to be just tax evasion. And he was on record for years saying the IRS is trying to get me, and they're trying to basically say that that I owe them a bunch of stuff that I don't have. But the other ones, and I don't recall what the other things they say that, he had warrants for, but I'm pretty sure that's new to the story. And I know I'm kind of like, spreading a conspiracy theory right there by saying all this, because I don't have any proof, And even if I did have proof, they'd say, oh, well, that was wrong back then. We didn't know that this was the story. But I do find it strange that it seems to me that story over the years has been altered. The story has been altered. I don't have proof that the old one was true and the new one's false, but the story has been altered. That is for certain. Now, Ed, you'll remember back when we first kind of when you discovered and introduced him to me, the Bill Cooper. Mm. A big thing he was talking about at the time was aliens. Mm-hmm. That was one of his first things. That's kind of what, I don't know, I don't want to necessarily say famous, because he's always been kind of an underground, person or character. But the thing that put him on the map, or I guess made him famous to some degree, was the things he said about aliens and the things he had seen while he was in the Navy and in Naval and Air Force intelligence. And you know about this, right? The gray aliens and the ships
making treaties with them,
right? The
lunar bases and things like that.
And he later backtracked on a lot of that and said that he came to realize that was misinformation. Do you want to chime in on that at all?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what, so he's obviously kind of, like you said, the godfather of conspiracy theories, mm-hmm. and that's where a lot of people started hearing about these from 20, 30 years ago, is him talking about it, his book, his radio show. Mm-hmm. And I think he was probably at heart an honest man, but he was only as good as his information. Like, his entire worldview was just his study of everything he had, and he got some things right, and he got some things wrong. Like, for example, he would talk about how the moon landings were faked and all the, the stuff with extraterrestrials. And then you get to, like, okay, well, there's these bases on the moon, and it's like, well, there's absolutely zero way to get any sort of evidence for that. And that's the sort of thing I think that could push away somebody from mainstream and make sort of conspiracy theorists look kind of dumb, too. Like, you can bring up some good evidence for maybe some other stuff, and then it's like, oh, come on, fucking moon bases, like, maybe it sounds cool and it's interesting, and you know what, maybe it does exist, but it's pure conjecture, right? And and to the aim of, like, waking up the public to anything, it doesn't help at all. But I mean, it's kind of to your point of him kind of coming out and saying some of the stuff is wrong. I think he kind of realized that he was in the military and the government, and he had connections with people, and there were probably connections that he had that purposely fed him bad information, and he came to realize that it was completely bunk. maybe some of the things that he believed were wrong. I mean, definitely some of the stuff that he was pushing was definitely true. I mean, the whole JFK thing. I mean,
Yeah. Another thing we should bring up before we jump right back into that subject is his military career. Because he says that he was in the Navy and that he was a Vietnam veteran and saw combat. And then he also says that he spent several years in both naval intelligence and Air Force intelligence. His military record does not show the Air Force or the naval intelligence. But, well, you would say, well, if you really were in those secret things, your military record probably wouldn't show that you were in those. And also, that'd be very easily changed if you were the one blowing the whistle on things. But his Navy career, as he says it, does check out. Does check out. And not only was he in the Navy, but he was fairly decorated. He did see, he was a Vietnam veteran. He has 2 medals from Vietnam. So we know that he didn't make that up. That is definitely true. And we know that his dad was a kind of a high-up guy in the Navy. But as far as his official record shows, it doesn't show him going above a petty officer in the Navy. A decorated one, but, doesn't show him going above an E5, which would be like a sergeant for most things, but in the Navy, that would be petty officer second class, I believe, is what that would be in the Navy.
I'm not sure.
In most places, it'd be the equivalent of a sergeant in the Marines or the Army, but I believe an E5 is a petty officer second class. So that does check out, but there is of course no record of him being in naval intelligence or Air Force intelligence. The thing with the aliens, like Ed was saying, is he's one of the guys that says that he saw documents that showed things like treaties with gray aliens. And and this comes not just from him either. There's guys like John Lear, other guys out there who have talked about the these things in Area 51 and the recovered bodies and the was it Truman or Eisenhower? It was Eisenhower that supposedly met with the aliens and set up this treaty, and that's why they're allowed to take the cows and do the experiments on them, and they can take only a limited amount of humans, but they're really not supposed to kill them, which is why we get abducted, but we usually get brought back. Or most of the time we get brought back. But he later has said that he believes that the vast... Oh, and he also did say that he specifically saw alien-type craft. Saw, super secret crafts being used and being experimented on and tested by the military. But then he later says, through information he was given, he says that he was wrong about that in a lot of ways, and that was actually misinformation that they liked people to see. To say, like, oh my god, what, aliens? Are you kidding? That's crazy, But really what he said is, no, those crafts, the craft I saw and spoke about existed, but they're not alien craft. They're secret government crafts that we're making and we're hiding, and they're, and those later turn out to be things like the stealth bomber, which we know was flying around at least 20 years before
it was revealed to the public.
Right. I mean, it was around 1999, I believe, that they started actually showing hey, this is what a stealth bomber looks like. This is what it looks like on the inside. This is what it looks like on the outside. Here's some specs. This is what it can do. And we know for sure that the stealth bomber was flying at least in 1979. We know, absolutely certain that it was flying then. If we know that, it was most likely flying before that. But the year we know for sure is that we were flying around stealth bombers in 1979, before any of us here were born. He also, said that this isn't aliens that we're making these deals with, or that are, that he was right that it's not really the U.S. government running the show, But it's not creepy little 4-foot-tall aliens in the back. It's a cabal. It's the Illuminati, in essence. It's whatever you want to call that. I think Illuminati. When I say Illuminati, a lot of times I'm just throwing that out as a. You can call it the Illuminati. You can call it the Deep State. You can call it, secret societies or New World Order or whatever you want to call it. But he's realizing that no, this isn't aliens. He was the first to admit that hey, like I that was not true what I was saying, or I don't think it was true. Now I was wrong about that. So he wasn't somebody that backtracked or tried to pretend like he didn't used to think that. No, he was always kind of owned his own opinions, and he was always the guy that kind of said that if he thought that something was absolutely 100% fact, he would tell you that. And if it wasn't, well, he would tell you that too, in most cases. He did this show for a long time, did Hour of the Time for a long time, and he spoke about these issues in depth and took callers and everything else nightly. So when a lot of times nowadays people want to try to say, hey, Bill Cooper said this, Bill Cooper said that, he's got a lot of info out there and a lot of him speaking out there. So it's not hard to find a 2-minute soundbite that says Bill Cooper said this. Adam and I haven't been on the radio or on podcasts nearly as long as Bill Cooper has or had and haven't had as many shows. But I bet if you went back and found Josh Houslander said this in 2011 and then he said this in 2017, completely contradicting himself. Well, I guarantee you can find stuff like that out there. It's not that hard. We've talked about it dozens and dozens of different topics on this show. And
when somebody says that, doesn't it show that they don't put enough thought in it to realize, like, hey, people, like, they change. And,
sure.
and if they're doing it right, they're actually growing and, like, discarding old bad beliefs and, taking on new ones that are better than before. So really, with unless you're born knowing everything, which no one is, you should be able to find that with everyone.
Sure.
I mean, I know that's true with me too. There's probably things I said 10 years ago that, I'd look back at myself and say, I was fucking wrong.
And especially when you're talking opinion-based stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Adam said one thing to me 4 years ago and then said a different thing 2 years ago, maybe it was the mood he was in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, maybe you were really trying to prove a point, and then we're discussing a totally different point later, and oh no, he said he was against taxes here, and then he says he's for. Well, we're talking about something totally different. So
what did CNN show the night before that he was?
Oh, Ed's trying to troll Adam. Bill Cooper talked a lot later when the show was, really going. He talked a lot about the Illuminati, and he talked a lot about Freemasonry. He was very vocal about
the trade or the
no, the society.
Oh, okay.
No. He talked a lot about the Freemasons and how they were in control of a lot of this, and he talked about how they were a very evil organization and how they were by no means a Christian organization, and he was extremely vocal about the Freemasons being behind a lot of this stuff. Yeah, not brickies. We're not talking about guys laying brick for a living.
Oh, is that what you call them in the construction
yes,
realm? They're brickies.
I've never met a brickie who referred to himself as a Mason or a Freemason ever in his life. Brickies, maybe they'd say bricklayer if they're but brickies.
Do you look down on them?
Yes, I definitely look down on brickies because I'm on the roof and they're below me. In my particular trade, but no, I do not look down on them as people by any means. In fact, brick houses are pretty awesome. There should be more brick houses out there. But and we've done a full podcast on. Have we done a full podcast on the Freemasons, or have we just covered them on the different secret societies
You know
podcasts
what?
we've done.
I don't know.
I know when we did one on we did one directly on the Illuminati, and we talked a lot about
Yeah.
Freemasons on that. And I know we did one on secret societies, and we talked a lot about the Freemasons there. I don't think we've done one solely on Freemasonry. But this was a huge topic for Bill Cooper, and he would take callers on it frequently, and many times they would argue with him and say, no, this is a great organization. And he was kind of one of the guys that used to talk about some of the different levels. You know, to the outside world, the top degree is a 33, right? 33rd degree Mason is the top Mason you can be, but he would talk about how there were actually degrees up into the 90s, well past that really truly knew the secrets of Freemasonry. And he would talk about it as he would talk about whether it was Freemasonry or some of the other ones, the Rosicrucians, that they were, maybe even a satanic or occult organization. We mentioned 9/11 and how he kind of predicted that. Something else that I think is kind of strange, that is something I've noticed in recent times. Back in Bill Cooper's day, although Bill Cooper was probably kind of a right-wing guy, perhaps you'd say, or a liberty-loving guy, definitely a small government liberty-loving guy, hated socialism, hated fascism completely and utterly. I think he would call himself a right-wing guy. I actually don't really think he was a right-wing guy. I think he was, as Adam and I have discussed a lot on different shows, people tend to look at the political graph and leave out the authoritarian, libertarian, north-south section of it. And I think he was someone that resided in the south area, not so much on the right side. But a lot of people, Bill Cooper being one of them, just kind of simplify it with the right and left. I don't really agree with that, but Bill Cooper would say he was a right-winger. I don't know that I would say he was a right-winger, but
either way, he would be banned from all social media were he still alive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He would, if Bill Cooper was still alive, you're absolutely right, Ed, he would absolutely be banned, and they would say that he is inciting something or it's hate speech, when actually, and I've listened to a lot of him, not a hateful man at all. Very much a guy that, he loathed racism in any form.
But that's how they do it, though, isn't it? Like, nobody would actually hear anything he had to say. They would have this idea of who William Cooper is, and they would hear all these bad things being said about him, and he wouldn't have any sort of voice to rebut that, and people would just have this sort of negative image of him, because that's kind of how it works.
Yeah. No, you're right, Ed. And the thing is that one thing you could find on YouTube very easily is because he was a conspiracy guy, a lot of times he would have people call in to his shows who were underground Aryans and things like this, and he used to, on a regular basis, debate these guys and tell them how ludicrous their ideas were. He hated the ideas of the Aryan race or Nazism or the people that feel like there's a race war, that this is, one race has to rise up to stop this. And very easily you can find, Google Bill Cooper slams Aryan Nazi or something, and you'll have a dozen of them, of different callers calling in, and he actually, I don't think he was that good of a debater. He made his points very good, and he was always very calm when he was just speaking on his show, but he'd lose his cool pretty easily. A lot of times, usually when he'd be debating some guy from the Aryan race, or Aryan Nation or one of these groups or whatever, he would a lot of times, just end up being like, shut up, you stupid jerk. It's like, God, shut up. Like, stop it. I try to let you talk, but you're an idiot. You're a jerk. Forget it. Shut up. That's how a lot of his debates would kind of end up. Just oh my God, I can't stand these idiots. So I don't know. I always thought it was kind of funny, but maybe not the best debate tactic, really, to just say you're wrong because you're stupid. You're just dumb. Shut up. I don't know. I always kind of liked it to some degree. He hated Alex Jones.
Who doesn't?
And David Icke.
Yeah. He yeah, you're right. Yeah.
You know why? Because there's probably a lot of things. Alex Jones is a disinformation agent.
Yes,
I'm convinced. There are quite a few things that he says that are quite possibly true or have an element of truth, but overall, I think he's just a shill. Yeah.
No, I agree with you, and that's what Bill Cooper used to say too. He said, and this was before Alex Jones was as big as he is now. And keep in mind, Cooper's been dead since 2001.
Yeah.
So everything he said no. Alex Jones he's a made man. He's on the payroll of somebody. He is spreading disinformation and trying to make the conspiracy theory, if you will. He's trying to make it mainstream, and he's trying to basically show that the people that agree with him are loons because he's a loon, to then discredit the entire idea. Another thing that I feel was very different back in these days, back in the 90s, the early 2000s. Nowadays, when you are considered a conspiracy theorist, or they talk about you as, oh, he's some crazy conspiracy theorist, they act as if conspiracy theories are something that are owned by the right. The conspiracy theories are something that's what radical conservatives believe are conspiracy theories. And this is new. The people that say this will act like it's not new. But this idea that conspiracy theory is owned by the right-wingers, and that Democrats don't ever believe in conspiracy theories, and only Republicans who are off the beaten path and have lost their way completely with logic believe in conspiracy theories. This didn't used to be the case. There wasn't this idea that conspiracy theories were only held by people on the right. And in Cooper's day, that was certainly not true. And I've found, delving into this very deeply, the only place where that doesn't exist, or doesn't seem to exist anymore, because I feel like they've won that battle now. The conspiracy theories are, oh yeah, let's let the crazy right-wingers think. Oh yeah, you probably listen to Alex Jones. Which Alex Jones, like we said, I don't like Alex Jones. I think he's a total misinformation agent. I think he's a fool, actually. Actually, I don't think he's a fool. I think he's smart. I think he's, been paid and doesn't really believe what he's saying. And I think he's fed what he's supposed to say, and then he says it. But the only place that I have noticed where this isn't true is actually in the American black culture. A lot of black people who still vote Democrat for a lot of ways still are up on this stuff and believe it and think the same way I do and the same way Bill Cooper did in a lot of these instances. But I feel like that's the last vestige of people from the left believing this stuff. I believe a lot of people on the left have been convinced that, oh yeah, oh geez, oh, did you hear that from Alex Jones?
For me, Josh, I find some conspiracy theories as I think they're fun. I think the alien thing is fun, and I think you're a naive person if, again, I've mentioned it before, that if you think that we're the only people the only intelligent life in the universe. Other things too.
No, Adam, you've definitely expressed your agreeance on.
I mean,
when I'm talking about the left, I'm definitely not talking about you.
I mean, Black. Was it the Black Knight satellite and the paranormal, the occult? I mean, shit like that's
Same
fun.
with the Illuminati and the New World Order and other things like this. You've definitely talked about this. You are definitely on board with the JFK idea.
You mentioned it earlier too, that the Illuminati, the term Illuminati, it can be a very ambiguous term.
Absolutely.
It's not just it might not be just one singular body in the world. It may not be Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash either. It may be. I mean, it may be something that is.
It might not be Namor and Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Either.
Yeah. They did the New World Order thing too.
The Illuminati, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, in the comics, yeah.
Oh, Iron Man was part of the.
Yeah. He was like kind of. They like touch on that in the movies where he's like the guy that he's like the future humanist. He knows what's better for everybody else, so he's going to control it.
So that's why he was on the side that he was in the Civil War movie.
Right. In the comics, it's like him and Reed Richards and guys like that. But since Fox and Disney can't get along, they can't really do it the way the comics.
The way it's supposed to be done.
The way it's supposed. The true way. They can't reveal the truth. He used to talk about the Clintons a lot. Bill and Hillary a lot.
It was because of Bill personally that they had it out for him and he got killed, right?
Right. Yeah, he actually claimed that it was, Bill Clinton kind of put it was Clinton and his people that put the order out. What's strange is...
Bill on Bill violence.
Yeah. What's strange is his predictions of the Clintons are spot on. They're absolutely spot on. He talked about how Bill Clinton was a guy that kind of governed from the center. But he talked about how they would reveal their very socialist tendencies later. And you can see, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, you can see what the modern Democratic Party has become. And you can see that Hillary Clinton is, because he referred to her as, he said she is a radical socialist. And her views, her views from the past show this. And if you see how Bill Clinton claimed his views were back then, and how Hillary portrays her Democratic views, they're very different candidates, very different people.
I think that's actually not too difficult of a prediction to make if you have kind of a general sense of what's going on, like Bill did, where you kind of understand the Hegelian dialectic, where you have the two sides and kind of pushing over and just realizing, well, those are key players, and that's kind of where things are heading towards. So it would completely make sense that they would kind of shift like that.
Right.
I guess I would disagree with him. I think that Bill and Hillary are more of opportunists than.
Well, that's his point, though. That's his point, is that they're saying what needs to be said to retain power. That they're just,
Okay.
I think that's kind of what he was getting at. And again, to say that like he was this crazy right winger and he didn't like the Clintons, well, it's true. He had nothing good to say about the Clintons. He thought they were terrible, but had no love for the Bush family. I mean, absolutely had no love for the the way the Republican Party had been moving, and basically he said that George Bush Sr. was, kind of a war criminal, and, in essence, in a lot of ways. He dies at the very beginning of George W. Bush's, regime, so it's not, or administration, I guess is the proper word. So I don't recall hearing anything directly about W or Jeb that wasn't here yet, but definitely had nothing good to say about George Bush Sr. He was a CIA guy. That's what, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, that's what he rallied against. That's what Bill Cooper rallied against the most, was this, these hidden groups taking liberty away from the American people. You mentioned the moon landing, Ed.
Mm-hmm.
I find it very interesting, and maybe some of this, hey, maybe I'm just sold on the guy because I like the way he talked. That's what haters could say, right? That, oh, Josh, you're just, you just like listening to his show because it gives you the creeps, and you think it's cool, and you'll just eat up anything this guy says. And I don't think I'm that guy, but I do admit I trust the man. I do. I trusted him, and I think he wasn't always right, but I do think he was actually one of the good guys out there. His moon landing stuff. I like what he has to say about the moon landing because he points out a lot of things that are inaccurate or that seem very unbelievable. And he never says we definitely didn't go to the moon. He never says that at all.
I think that's a huge misnomer of saying that the moon landings were fake, because then automatically any sort of opponent of that says, well, no, we've been to the moon, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, you're just saying that what they showed us, that was a show. That was television.
Right.
Doesn't mean there's other stuff going on behind the scenes, which most certainly there seemed to be.
Mm-hmm. And when we did a show, I don't know if we did a full show on it or did a partial show, I can't remember. But when we did a show about the moon landing, we talked about... I remember I separated it into 3 different groups of moon landing deniers. One of them being the flat earth people. Bill Cooper was not a flat earther by any stretch of the imagination, and I've yet to meet an intelligent flat earther. Sorry, I got an open mind. I love to hear conspiracy stuff. The flat earth thing is goofy at best.
Side note, I kind of think that's a trap.
I do too.
Because you're taking it's purposeful disinformation. You're taking something that a lot of people can kind of see, it doesn't add up, like the moon landing, and then you do this just kind of hard turn and take it somewhere retarded. And,
right.
And it works to discredit sort of conspiracy theorists and divide people too.
It did. Yeah, no, it does. It makes they love to have the conspiracy theories that seem crazy, so then all conspiracy theories seem crazy, and that's what many would say about the David Icke thing too.
Yeah.
Say, you're a conspiracy theorist, so you believe that reptile people are running the world, that they're all shapeshifters.
He's just as much of a shill as Alex
right.
Jones.
And an example of that, where I feel like they love to feed the disinformation, is the Denver International Airport, one of my favorite topics. They have since made jokes about, our airport, it's crazy, everybody knows how crazy it is. And the one they always go to is, they say, down here's where you can see the reptile people. They always go to that. They had cameras in the thing the one time, and the workers are wearing reptile masks, and goofy reptile masks, and they love to say that one because they want to pretend like they're embracing the goofiness of the conspiracy theory, when if you look at the Denver International Airport, there's some weird shit going on at that place that's legitimate. And no, I don't think it's reptile people. But there are some very hidden and very strange things about the Denver International Airport. We did a whole show on it, and it's crazy. There's some weird stuff. It might not be that weird. The stuff that's hidden might not be that weird. Like I've tend to say, I really just think it's a big bunker for elite if something happens. And to me, to think that the elites of this world don't have places like that all over the globe, to me, you're the crazy one. If you think that. If you think they don't have backup plans upon backup plans upon backup plans to keep the government running in case a meteor hits this place or H-bomb goes off or something, you're the silly one if you believe that. And I don't really even think it's that nefarious. necessarily. If I had the means to do that, you can bet I'd have a enormous bunker the size of an oversized airport that I could hide my family in. But again, I don't know that there's anything about Cooper with that, except for the tied-in thing that the big blue horse, known as Lucifer, out front of the Denver International Airport, and Cooper's book called Behold a Pale Horse. Basically, this referencing the end times, the end of the world, being taken over by occult or evil forces, if you will. It's a reference to the Bible, in essence. Behold a pale horse. What were we on? I kind of got distracted. Oh, the moon landing. I'm sorry. With the moon landing thing, too, is... All right, sorry, we were breaking it down before, right, about the 3 ways. And this isn't like an official thing. This is just something I had said in the past on a different show. So, okay, you got the flat earthers. They're out. Unless you believe that. You want to believe flat earth? Okay, cool. Convince me. Change my mind. But I don't think the flat earth thing has any merit, really, at all. Some of the ice cap stuff about the what's going on in Antarctica and, Admiral Byrd and stuff, that's kind of interesting. A lot of the flat earthers try to tie into that, but I still don't. I think there's weird stuff going on over there, but I don't think that proves that the Earth isn't a globe. But the other parts of the lunar conspiracy are that either one, we've never been to the moon and those tapes are faked, or that there's a lot more going on the moon that they don't want us to know about, and that's why the tapes are faked. 2 very different ideas, but all coming back to the idea that the thing we saw, or some of the footage we've seen about the moon landing, is not real. And what I like about Cooper's coverage, from what I've heard in his old coverage from the past, is that he doesn't seem to really take a side in that. He's just, all he's pointing out is this, and this don't add up. Now, does that mean it's because they don't want to show us pictures of the moon that show the big lunar base on the other side? Or does that mean that, crap, we're losing the space race and we want to look cool in front of the Russians? I don't know. But I do know this. I do know NASA lies through their teeth. Like, all the time. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason. Some people, if you're one of those people who want to say, like, well, hey, you gotta lie for national security. Okay, fine. Whatever. I okay, cool. Like, hey, if you're gonna have the CIA, they gotta lie. If you're gonna have NASA and they're gonna know secrets, they can't tell us everything. Okay, fine. Be that guy. Be that guy if you want.
Except but they lie in ways that aren't security, though. They doctor photos, relentlessly.
Right. So, I mean, and if you are that guy that is saying, like, oh, they gotta lie, they can't tell us the truth, okay, you're still admitting that they lie, though. Right? I mean, you're still admitting that they lie frequently. And NASA has been caught in, at this point, hundreds of lies over the years. You can't believe anything NASA says. I mean, not only do they lie, but when they say they're going to do something, they rarely ever do it. I mean, really, it doesn't happen. They're completely unreliable in anything they say. So when I see a guy like Cooper say, look at the way he's carrying this backpack. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense that he's on the moon. And then NASA, 40 years later, just has still never bothered to... Tell me why they're wrong, NASA. I mean, really, please. I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm surely not. So when someone says, how's the flag waving? That doesn't make sense. How would the flag be waving up there on the moon? I don't know.
Solar winds?
I mean, really, I don't know. But I have people saying, with which seems like pretty good evidence as to why that can't be happening, and crickets from NASA for decades. You know, where is NASA telling us that, like, okay, listen, we understand that there's some people saying that A, B, and C couldn't have happened. This is how it happens. I don't hear that. If that's going on from NASA somewhere, I'm not seeing it or hearing it, and I'm looking. And the big thing that Cooper talks about is the way they carry the equipment, and the way that they move, and the way that they jump on the moon. And the moon is supposed to be 1/6 our gravity, which means that an astronaut, or a human being in good physical shape, which we know that our astronauts aren't just in good physical shape, right? They have to be in prime, top physical shape. If what they're telling us is true about the rigorous things they put them through in the tests, and they only take the best of the best, a person in decent shape should easily be able to jump like 5 feet in the air on the moon. No big deal. Like a hop. Like, boop, you know, I mean, just like a decent hop. Should easily get there. Oh, but they're weighed down by all this heavy stuff on the moon. Okay, so the thing that supposedly weighs 185 pounds on Earth, which it probably doesn't. That's actually, you know, the NASA said that all the stuff that the astronauts had to carry weighed 85 pounds, and later they're like, oh no, that was the very first prototype. By the time they were going, it was more like it weighed 75 or 80 pounds. So if it weighed 185 pounds on Earth, it weighs like 30 on the moon. Why does it look so hard to lift? Why is it bowing down the steel rod that they're carrying it on? Why is it bowing that down? It weighs 30 pounds. They're on the moon now, right? I mean, the astronauts shouldn't be struggling to move. Why are they struggling to move? They weigh 30 pounds.
Yeah, I mean,
they're a 180-pound man. They weigh 30 pounds on the moon.
I've mentioned this before. I guess I really I hate saying this, but I guess this is just something I really don't care too much about when it comes to like this particular conspiracy theory. I just think that maybe it's something that they've wrapped themselves too much into, and they have to continue to keep lying about it to save face. I just think, I don't know. To me, it's just, people keep on asking the questions, and why doesn't NASA address it? I think I've said it before, is like, why do they need to address it? I mean, it just seems like whatever you tell somebody who's too wrapped up into it, they're not going to believe you anyway. But again, I really don't care.
See, but that's what makes the crap conspiracy theories crap. Is that guys like Ed and I, who are big into conspiracy theories, we got guys out there talking about the flat Earth. But where's the proof? Oh, there's plenty of proof that the Earth is not flat. There's plenty of it.
Thanks to NASA.
It didn't take NASA. I mean, yes, some of it according to NASA, but it didn't take NASA.
We knew the Earth wasn't flat before NASA.
Yeah. Fair enough.
We knew it before the 1400s, too.
Yeah, we did. That's another common misconception. Christopher Columbus, I know he's a devil now, but according to everybody, but Christopher Columbus actually wasn't that terrible of a person, but whatever, that's
yeah, he was, but
he really wasn't, actually, but it doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter.
Let Adam defend the cannibals.
Yeah, but listen, Christopher Columbus didn't think the Earth was flat. Neither did the kings and queens of Spain and Portugal. People didn't think that. Some people did think that back then. that the Earth was flat.
It wasn't
And
as-
they have an excuse. It's 1490.
It wasn't as prevailing of a thought as we're led to believe, though.
No, it was not at all. For the most part, most people thought that the Earth was round back then. The thing that some of them were arguing about was they didn't know how big it was.
Or that
Christopher
there was-
Columbus was theorizing, and he was wrong, by the way. So he was wrong about his theory, somewhat wrong about his theory, but his theory wasn't the Earth was flat. He was theorizing, or really just hoping, that it was much smaller than it actually is.
That there weren't two big continents
Right,
between them
and was
Asia.
hoping that if we head west, we'll hit the Indies, we'll hit China. Around the time he hit, the Americas, he was hoping that he'd hit India. What many other people, the dissenters, they were thinking that they were actually right about how big the Earth was. And they were thinking, you're just going to die at sea. Because they're guessing that it's around the size that it actually is, and that there isn't any other land. So they were thinking he was going to try to have to travel that whole way, not hit the Americas, hit China, and hey, maybe your boat will hit there, but you'll all starve to death before then. That was the other prevailing thought. That's what they were debating. Columbus and others just said, only one way to find out, right? Give me some boats. But they weren't scared that they were going to fall off the edge of the Earth. Made up. And you probably learned that in grade school, like I did. I remember being told that by teachers that, they thought the Earth was flat and that you were going to fall off the edge.
It's funny, even flat earthers don't think that.
Right, they don't. No, they don't. But hey, if some people did think that in 1480, they're not stupid. I mean, it was 1480, for God's sakes. We don't have satellite photos. We don't have, we don't have any of this crap. They were all just kind of guessing, but most of them were guessing pretty right. I mean, Galileo had been around. We had done some research. They were pretty smart, actually. But when I see a guy like Bill Cooper break down some of the moon landing tapes and ask these questions, yeah, I admit it makes me think. Like, I don't believe that those tapes are everything they're telling us they are. Maybe they are on the moon, though. I'm not saying they're not on the moon, but they're not being honest with exactly what's going on. The question I always ask, and I guess NASA has addressed this one. They claim there's a camera attached to the thing somewhere or something, but who's taking the picture when he's jumping out of the ship? And if he was the first man on the moon, if Armstrong's the first guy on the moon, who's taking that picture? Because it's not somebody, it's being taken from the moon. The other thing is, and I'm not an expert on this, and I can't prove it or disprove it, Bill Cooper did have a degree in photography, though, that he got after he left the Navy. And he says that every single shot you ever see on the moon is, I think it's like 500 yards away or something. But it's the same distance. Why? Why does the landscape not change? Why does it, it's the moon. It should change just like any place on Earth would change. Unless it's a studio. Unless, they're just not telling us the truth. And again, when I say they're not telling us the truth, I don't necessarily mean that we didn't go to the moon. Maybe we went to the moon and it's a lot like they said, but they just didn't really know how to show it to us, so they faked a little thing beforehand to rile up the folks. I don't know. No. I mean, I think we have the technology to do it. I think we definitely do now. How can we never go back, though?
Well, they'll say that it's too expensive and we don't have the the technology anymore because they don't have that one rocket or whatever.
Or there's nothing worth going back for.
The thing that always cracks me up is when people say a line like, "We don't have the technology anymore." That line makes no sense whatsoever. There's no truth there.
I agree.
And
inflation makes it too expensive.
Right. So they love to tell us...
we can't just print more money.
Right. They love to tell us that we can't go to the moon again because it would be too expensive and it's not worth it. But when everybody questions whether or not NASA's worth it, they love to say, "Do you realize all the great stuff we got? All the great stuff we got from the moon." All the great, what the moon rocks showed us, the antibiotics, all the great stuff we got from the moon. It's like, well, then it's worth it, right?
Well, I've heard that used as a big government argument.
Right.
That what was put into the government, almost kind of like roads, like they've got this lasting value. Like it's better if you pump all this money into NASA because it's going to give you all this technology that has these benefits down the road years to come. Yeah. So that's if you're going to go by that, then okay, why not go back? Let's increase the technology even more.
Sure. Why aren't we on Mars yet? If we were on the moon in the 60s, why aren't we on Mars? You know? I mean... So, I don't know. When it comes to the moon landing, I think there's questions that are legitimate, and I think NASA's full of crap. I don't trust anything they say.
I think I think a lot of people can get to that conclusion. A lot of reasonable people, and it's not unreasonable to think that. I think what happens after is kind of maybe the dangerous part, because you go to flat Earth, you go to all these lunar-based conspiracies, and it's like, you know something's wrong, but you don't know any of those things, or you do know that Earth's not flat, but you don't know that there's some sort of lunar base on the dark side of the moon. Like that's, like I said earlier, it's just pure conjecture, and it's kind of that trap that you fall into as a conspiracy theorist.
Another problem I think that the moon landing conspiracies have, because you don't have this, I think you can more easily convince somebody that there's an Illuminati out there, some people pulling the strings. Makes sense, because I mean this unexplainable thing at least kind of lends some explanation to things we can't explain. Even though it just leads to another thing we can't explain, but at least it makes some sense. Even if it's something like, the CIA started HIV/AIDS, or helped spread it, to limit the black, Hispanic, and gay populations. That's like a nasty thing, but people can kind of get on board with it, because they're like, yeah, I could see the CIA in the late 70s and early 80s doing something like that. That was another thing that Cooper was big on early in his career, was the HIV being spread by the CIA. I think things like the NWO, or hell, even aliens can kind of be sold to people, but people don't want to believe the moon landing thing because they love their country and they want to be rah-rah and patriotic, and they don't want to believe that we didn't do that. Because it's a great story. The moon landing is a great story about American exceptionalism. And they don't want to believe that maybe the story doesn't really go exactly how you thought it went.
Isn't it kind of funny that now, maybe more than ever, people are sort of questioning and, fact-checking, not believing their government, yet they will still believe in that, like, oh yeah, 50, 60 years ago, like, they were on the up and up and completely honest. And
right.
It's like, no, they've been lying the entire time.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you here. Listen, if you guys are into this stuff, we'll take it back to Adam and Ed here in a little bit too, before we wrap up and go to Pumpkin. But if you guys are into this stuff at all, and you want to kind of really come at it with a clear head and kind of do your own research, Bill Cooper is a great place to start. He is a very intelligent guy, was a very intelligent guy, and some of his stuff is extremely enlightening. Really, it's something, it's definitely something you should check out if you are into this at all. I tend to think he was a pretty honest guy. Doesn't mean everything he ever said was perfect or factual, or that he was a perfect individual, but he's a fascinating person who I think in a lot of ways proved a lot of what some people wonder about. Some people, question. I think he does a great job of showing where some things go too far and where some things are definitely possible and probable, actually. What do you guys think, Adam? William Cooper, nut job, smart guy. How do you feel about him? Just, think he was an honest dude, or?
I think he was genuine. I think that unlike a guy like Alex Jones, who is, I think is more in it for more maybe nefarious reasons, that William Cooper, I don't think, was in it for that. Like I said, I think he's a genuine guy. I think people like him are somewhat important. Guys who are, guys who ask questions, guys who, I don't want to say imaginative, because that might seem like it's a little, too bunk, or he's kind of out of his gourd, but, like I said, I think he's a genuine guy who believed what he thought and perhaps gave some good reason for it. So, I like what you said too. If this is something that interests you and you want to look into it further, Bill Cooper is definitely the guy to start out with. That's it.
Another thing I think is really important to say about him too is everything we have about Bill Cooper is before 2001. Or 2001 or before, and if you go listen to his stuff right now, you'd think he was talking about right now. To the point where, if you were listening back in 1998, you might have thought, "Oh, I don't know, man, you're maybe kind of off your rocker." But listen to it right now, you'll be very surprised that this stuff is 10, 15, 20, 25 years old. You'll be very surprised, because it sounds like he is talking about yesterday and tomorrow. Ed, how do you feel about Bill Cooper?
Kind of in the same way. I think he was genuine, but he was wrong about a lot of things. But like I said earlier, mostly because of his sources, and he would change things on that. But the thing I would offer as proof as to why he was genuine is tax evasion. To be very openly against paying any sort of taxes, like, to anybody who ever says taxation is theft, like, that is your idol right there. Like, right. A lot of people will say that. I'll say that all the time, and then income tax time comes and says, well, shit, I don't want to go to jail, and I got a family, and I got I'm too much of a pussy to fight the IRS on my own, so here you go, here's your money, sort of thing. But no, he had the balls to do it, and if there's one system that will not, like, that kind of clearly separates you out, that says, yeah, you're not one of them, like, I haven't come across somebody who's open about tax evasion who seems like they might be on the payroll of the Illuminati. Like, that just doesn't happen. That's one thing they're very serious about, and it put a target on his head and eventually led to him being killed. But that's not to say that because he did something that I kind of find just, that he was right about everything. Very clearly there's things I don't agree with and that he's wrong. And if you look back, there's probably a lot of things, and he would probably, if he were alive today, he probably would have changed his views again and come across new information and say, what I talked about 30 years ago, that's junk. Like, I came to realize it was wrong. But
do you feel that a lot of that wrong stuff was happening towards the end of his life, or do you feel like that most of the wrong stuff was in the early 90s?
Probably throughout, and some of it may have even been, people who were his sources realized that, he was becoming more popular and purposely fed him stuff. But, I think he took an honest attempt to make a worldview out of everything, and in that sense, he did a good job, and, it's entirely worthwhile to check him out, because, he can get you start kind of.
You still a fan? Still a fan?
Yeah. So
I think that's kind of respectable too. Somebody that's able to take a look at what they said before and then take it again and say I was wrong and I found new information like you were saying, Ed, and go on from there. I mean, and I certainly do think that there's a difference too between something doing something like that and being very opportunistic about it as well. I don't think it doesn't seem like Bill Cooper quite had it didn't seem like he was in the position to be an opportunistic person. Not like, it mostly what I think about when I think of somebody who's very opportunistic, obviously the first thing I think about is a politician, whether it's whether it's Bill or Hillary Clinton or even Donald Trump. But now I know you've gotten to those arguments before, Josh, against people who support Donald Trump. Why does he all of a sudden change his viewpoints and he's a 70-plus-year-old man?
Right.
Is it because he's genuine about it and perhaps sees the light on certain issues? No, he's doing it to get votes. He's doing it to maintain a base. Whereas I don't think Bill Cooper, it doesn't seem like he would be in the position to do something like that.
Right.
Like for instance,
And he wasn't a rich man either.
No, he wasn't a rich man.
Didn't die some rich guy.
No, what is Bill Cooper? It seems like give a shit about really who believes him and who doesn't.
Whether he was, which I don't, I think it's the former in the statement I'm about to make, but whether he was legitimately doing all this research or whether he was making all this crap up, the guy worked his butt off and was out there every night talking about this stuff. And I mean, he worked really hard and he didn't die some rich dude. He didn't. So he was working very hard for this cause. And that is a fact.
But he wasn't forcing it. He wasn't forcing people to believe it.
No.
He wasn't trying to acquire votes or.
No.
He wasn't trying to lobby some corporation to give him, millions of dollars.
And this is before the internet's real big too. He was always an underground guy. This guy's never been a household name. It's not. I mean, his name isn't like Alex Jones or Joe Rogan or something like that who does a show. He's very much an underground guy, and because of that, he of course didn't have. I'm sure he had his following, but nowhere near what big YouTubers have now or anything like that. And I talked about how he kind of was known for kind of like arguing with his guests that called in. This guy didn't have that big of a base with that many people listening to him, and he wasn't above telling one of his listeners like, "You're an idiot," like you're just like, shut up, you're a jerk, you're racist, get get out of here, and that's not a smart thing to do if your only desire is to grow your network of listeners. No, he had an agenda that he was trying to push. He had information that he felt that he needed to get out to people. I think that's genuine. Ed, you mentioned something, just real quick, you mentioned something about the tax evasion. One of my favorite meme quotes out there is that, people love to say, taxes are the price you pay for living in a civilized society. Well, one of my favorite quotes is, income tax is the price you pay for not being quite the man your ancestor was. Yeah. And that, and that doesn't ring true in a lot of other countries, but in the United States of America, that quote completely rings true. That is the price you pay for not being quite the man your ancestor was.
Yep.
But I think that about wraps up for Bill Cooper. We'll go to let's go to Pumpkin, guys. When's our next show gonna be? It'll be
12th, I think. February.
Okay, February 12th. So
yep.
two short weeks away will be our next. This is one of our rare week 5 deep issues. We always do it the second and fifth Tuesday of the month, but only a few fifth Tuesdays exist. So we're gonna dive into Pumpkin here. Ed is reaching his hand into Pumpkin to give us our next topic for February 12th.
Pumpkin's not too thrilled with Siri right now, too.
Oh, no?
No.
Uh-oh.
That's what I was informed.
Oh, crap. I do not want to be there when Pumpkin and Siri get in a fight. All right, Ed has picked one. Adam is going to read it. Our next Deep Issues topic will be...
Ooh, it's a fun one, I think. Planet X.
Oh, cool. All right. I don't even remember that being put into Pumpkin. That's cool, though. That's a fun one. You into that at all, Ed?
It should be fun.
Planet X? All right, right on. Planet X, yeah. New Beery, right? Is that what they
Yep.
call it? All right. That's a fun one. I'll have to get on the research train on that one. That's not something I know a ton about yet, but that'll be a super fun one. On February 12th of 2019, Deep Issues number 31 will be Planet